French priest exposes 7 forbidden truths in the Ethiopian Bible. Imagine a solitary figure, a French priest, weathered not by luxury, but by years of devotion, carrying not grandeur, but the heavy burden of a discovery that has set his very soul aflame. In his trembling hands lies a manuscript older than empires, hidden for centuries in the shadowed highlands of Ethiopia. Its pages are brittle, yet the fire that breathes through them is alive. This is not ink arranged on parchment. It is a mirror held up to humanity itself, reflecting what rulers conspired to conceal, what churches trembled to proclaim, and what ordinary believers were never meant to behold. The forbidden here is not a matter of mere doctrine. It is the confrontation of power, the unveiling of the soul's deepest longings and its most primal terrors. And now, as the priest speaks, the silence of centuries splinters. He does not simply reveal, he exposes. His words fall with the weight of treason against kings, popes, and empires. Yet at the same time they blaze with liberation, tearing through the veils that have long suffocated truth. To hear them is to tremble. To accept them is to know you will never again see faith, history, or authority in the same way. These are not teachings softened by time. They are forbidden truths, shards of light torn violently from darkness, fragments of a fire the world tried and failed to smother. If this story shakes you, stay with us. Subscribe to uncover the next forbidden revelation and share your thoughts in the comments. Your voice matters in keeping these hidden truths alive. French priest exposes hidden scriptures the church tried to bury. The first truth he exposes is not wrapped in the fire of prophecy, nor clothed in the thunder of angels, but in something quieter and far more devastating: erasure. What shakes him is not what is written, but what was deliberately silenced. He describes these hidden scriptures, still lingering in the Ethiopian canon, like spectral witnesses of a past deliberately forgotten, texts excised by human hands, words stripped from eternity and buried beneath centuries of obedience. His voice trembles as he admits that their danger lies not in heresy, but in their very existence. For they testify to the audacity of men who once presumed to edit the voice of God. Imagine, he says, not a church of soaring steeples or marble sanctuaries, but an empire of silence, a fortress built not of stone, but of absence, where every missing word is a locked door and every suppressed verse is a chain fastened to the imagination of mankind. To exclude a text is not simply to omit ink on parchment. It is to erase a possibility, to mutilate the range of the human spirit, to strip away the breath of questions that might have liberated the soul. And yet, in the highlands of Ethiopia, beyond the reach of councils and kings, those forbidden voices remained, stubborn as mountains, enduring as wind. Here linger the book of Enoch with its cosmic visions of angels who descend and fall, and the book of Jubilees with its intricate reckonings of time, and other fragments that speak of realms beyond the mortal coil. These are not idle curiosities nor quaint myths, but testimonies of how human faith once soared higher, wider, freer until the hand of authority cut its wings. The priest leans forward as he confesses the heart of the crime. The church did not merely forget these writings, it buried them, like one buries bodies under earth, sealing them away in darkness so that no light might shine from their words. And why? Because they spoke of a cosmos too vast to be contained within the dogmas of empire, because they envisioned a humanity too free to be governed by hierarchies, because they whispered of a God too uncontainable to be chained to the throne of kings or the altar of priests. Their existence is a scandal not because of what they reveal about heaven, but because of what they reveal about power, that what you believe today is not the fullness of what was once known, but only the shadow of what survived, curated by hands that trembled not with reverence but with ambition. This revelation, the priest declares, is not simply historical, it is existential. For if the Bible itself is the product of human decisions, then faith itself cannot be a prison of unquestioned dogma, but must instead be recognized as a battlefield of choices, where every believer must wrestle with the knowledge that truth has been shaped, trimmed, and yes, sometimes mutilated. His voice shakes not from fear of damnation, but from awe, For he has come to see that truth, when censored, does not vanish. It grows sharper, more potent, like fire smothered under ash that waits only for a breath of wind to ignite again. The forbidden, he insists, is never destroyed. It waits, pushing and persistent, calling across centuries, demanding to be heard again. To confront these hidden scriptures is to confront the possibility that our faith has been built on half-truths and chosen silences, and that the God who lives beyond human grasp is not diminished by what was excluded, but magnified, overflowing the boundaries men sought to impose. What terrifies him most is not the words themselves, but the courage they require, the courage to admit that history has been curated, that the spiritual inheritance of billions was not handed down in purity, but filtered through the ambitions of those who sought to control it. And yet, in this very terror, he finds liberation. For if truth has been hidden, then truth can be rediscovered. If voices have been silenced, then voices can be restored. If possibilities have been erased, then possibilities can be imagined anew. And in this rediscovery, he insists, lies not the death of faith, but its resurrection. Faith is no longer submission to a fixed canon, but a living encounter with the forbidden, the silenced, the nearly lost. Faith is not the passive acceptance of chains, but the trembling courage to break them. He concludes with a whisper, heavy as thunder. The forbidden is not forgotten. It waits, and it waits for those bold enough to open their eyes, to step beyond the walls of silence, and to reclaim what was once buried as if dead. French priest exposes the truth about angels and fallen beings. The second truth the French priest dares to unveil is darker, more terrifying, for it pierces straight into the mythic marrow of existence, tearing away the sanitized image of heaven that the faithful have long been handed like children given toys to quiet their questions. He reads from the forbidden text with a trembling voice, and what emerges is not the calm serenity of angels painted on cathedral ceilings, hovering with harps and halos, but beings of fire, beings of hunger, beings who rebel. They do not remain confined to their radiant thrones. They fall, they burn, they cross forbidden thresholds. They descend into the world of flesh, stepping into the fragile boundaries of earth to mingle with humanity, not as protectors, but as violators of divine order. In these hidden pages, the cosmos is not the neatly divided architecture of heaven above and earth below, but a trembling frontier where borders are blurred, fragile, and easily trespassed. And what is most shocking, the priest confesses, is not their presence among us, but their desire. For the angels, luminous and radiant, do not fall merely out of arrogance, but out of longing. They yearn for the touch of human flesh, for the forbidden intimacy of mortal life, for the dangerous secrets of the earth that God himself had withheld. They lust for us, and in their descent they do not arrive empty-handed. They bring gifts, poisoned gifts. They teach men the forging of weapons, turning iron into instruments of murder. They whisper the craft of sorcery, bending creation into manipulation and illusion. They reveal the seductions of vanity, painting the flesh with powders and colors until pride becomes worship of the self. And women, entranced by their beauty, bear children of impossible size and strength. The Nephilim, half angel, half man, towering giants who embody the terror of crossing boundaries never meant to be crossed, beings too immense for the earth and too corrupt for heaven, symbols of a hybrid existence that frightens both realms. The priest pauses, and in the silence his words linger like fire. Why would the church fear this story? Why bury it beneath centuries of silence? Because it renders humanity not weak, not insignificant, but dangerously entangled with the divine. If angels themselves can fall because of us, if they can desire us, betray their own essence for us, then humanity is not mere dust blown into shape. We are the spark that can ignite rebellion even in heaven. This truth does not flatter the faithful with comfort. It terrifies them with responsibility. For if angels fall, then no order is eternal, no hierarchy secure, no authority beyond corruption. Every throne trembles, every chain rusts, every empire of heaven and earth alike is vulnerable to the weakness of desire and the fire of choice. The forbidden truth is not that angels sinned, but that they sinned for us, because of us, through us. And so the priest declares with a voice weighted in sorrow, divinity itself is not immune to corruption, nor is humanity immune to glory. The walls between us and the heavens are not impenetrable fortresses. They are porous, fragile, trembling with every choice we make. To know this is to walk with trembling, to realize that we are neither beasts condemned to earth, nor saints destined only for heaven, but something infinitely more perilous. Beings who unsettle even angels, beings whose freedom is dangerous not only to ourselves, but to the entire cosmic order. What does it mean, he asks, if humanity is capable of drawing angels from their heights, of igniting rebellion in the skies? It means we are not insignificant. It means our lives are not small accidents in a vast cosmos. It means that even heaven bends toward us, trembles for us, breaks upon us. And perhaps in this terrifying truth lies the reason it was buried. For if ordinary men and women were ever to believe that they carry such weight, such power, such dangerous beauty, then they would never again bow so easily to thrones, altars, and crowns. They would see themselves not as dust, but as participants in a drama that unsettles the very stars. And so the priest closes the forbidden page, his hands shaking, his eyes burning, and whispers what cannot be undone. The forbidden is not merely a record of the past, it is a mirror of what we are, what we can be, what we must face. We are not safe, we are not simple, we are not beasts nor saints. We are the hinge upon which heaven itself has once faltered, the edge upon which eternity trembles. French priest exposes prophecies that shake Christianity's core. The third revelation the French priest dares to lift from the shadows strikes not at the surface of belief, but at its marrow, its very lifeblood. Prophecy. Prophecy, he insists, is not a parlor trick of foretelling, nor the mystical fortune-telling of charlatans. It is the architecture of destiny, the scaffolding upon which human history either rises or collapses. And within the Ethiopian manuscripts he has opened, the prophecies do not sing in harmony with the sanitized canon of the West. They ring like discordant bells in the night, shattering silence, terrifying rulers, unsettling the faithful. They speak not of gentle shepherds or predictable triumphs, but of upheaval, of crowns burning on the heads of rulers, of temples that swell into towers of pride only to split apart under the weight of their own corruption. One passage burns in his mind like fire seared into flesh, a vision of a kingdom of iron and fire, a realm where priests are no longer prophets but merchants, where sanctuaries cease to be sanctuaries and instead become banks, holy places converted into engines of profit, altars turned into tables of exchange. It is a vision too familiar, too close to the bone of our own age, where the sacred has been repurposed into spectacle and the language of God reduced to slogans for profit and politics. Another prophecy drips like blood from a wound, the image of a Messiah not clothed in triumph, but concealed in rejection, a Redeemer who is not exalted by thrones, but hidden among the oppressed, despised by the powerful who dare to claim they speak in God's name. This Messiah is not the icon of comfort, but the stone in the shoe of every empire, the thorn in the side of every hypocrite. Such visions are not the lullabies of faith. They are indictments, daggers pressed against the throats of kings and priests alike. The priest confesses that he trembled when he read them, not because they contradicted the scriptures he had been taught, but because they revealed what scripture often seeks to hide, that faith was never meant to be safety. That faith is not the soft pillow of the soul, but the fire that burns away illusions, the storm that rips apart complacency. Faith, in its forbidden form, is not an empire of order, but a rebellion against false order. Not the quiet maintenance of thrones, but the earthquake that topples them. The priest whispers, as if afraid the walls themselves might hear. To embrace these prophecies is to embrace a Christianity that terrifies the powerful, a Christianity that does not bless empires but dismantles them, a Christianity that is less a crown and more a cross, less a monument and more a fire. And so the forbidden truth he lays bare is this: prophecy is not about foretelling the future. It is about unveiling the present. It is the mirror held before the face of kings so they may see their corruption. It is the fire lit in the heart of the oppressed so they may see their dignity. It is not prediction, it is exposure. Prophecy does not exist to pacify the faithful, but to awaken them, to shake them from the sleep of obedience, to demand transformation here and now. No wonder the priest says with bitterness that rulers silenced these voices, buried these words, scrubbed them from the canon. For if people were to believe these prophecies, if they were to take them seriously, they would never again bow to thrones or bend their knees to crowns disguised as halos. They would rise, not with weapons of iron, but with the fire of faith. And that fire would consume the corruption of priests turned merchants and churches turned banks. This is why prophecy was buried, not because it was untrue, but because it was too true, too dangerous, too alive. And as he closes the manuscript, the priest knows that the danger is still present, that the words still burn, that the silence imposed upon them is thin as paper and ready to ignite. He whispers, not as a priest, but as a man undone. Prophecy is not the promise of what will come, it is the exposure of what already is, and in that exposure lies both judgment and salvation. French priest exposes secrets of Jesus kept from the world. The fourth revelation, the priest confesses with trembling voice, is the most dangerous of all, for it dares to reach into the blazing heart of the faith, to touch the figure at the center of everything, Jesus. Until now, the revelations have unsettled faith, shaken doctrine, and pierced the illusions of power. But this one burns differently because it presses against the very image upon which billions have built their lives. In the Ethiopian text, preserved like embers beneath ash, the priest claims there are whispers, sayings, stories, teachings absent from the Western canon, removed not because they contradicted, but because they expanded, because they opened windows into a Christ too free for empire, too untamable for institutions, too alive to be imprisoned in dogma. These are not denials of his divinity, but declarations of his depth, unveiling a Jesus less caged by the neat categories of creed and more radiant as a teacher of forbidden wisdom, a revealer of mysteries. Some passages speak of parables never heard in the West, words that suggest the kingdom of God is not a far-off promise in the clouds, but a fire burning already within each soul, a reality waiting to erupt in every human heart with the force of revolution. Others describe him as a master of mysteries, not only speaking to fishermen on the shores of Galilee, but to seekers of hidden knowledge, men and women who long to pierce the veil of appearances and step into the deeper truth of existence. This Jesus is not the domesticated figure enthroned in stained glass, but the restless teacher who unsettles both the righteous and the wicked, a Christ whose words do not soothe the comfortable but ignite the restless into transformation. And here lies the danger, not heresy, but possibility. If Jesus taught truths that were erased, then the Christ we have inherited may be only a silhouette, a shadow flattened by empire, edited by councils, constrained by those who feared the fire of his message more than they revered his life. The forbidden Christ is not simply Savior. He is revealer, awakener, disturber of sleep. To hear him in these hidden words is not to be lulled into the narcotic of comfort, but to be thrown into a furnace of change, to be awakened to the possibility that the kingdom is not handed down from thrones but erupts from within the human spirit itself. The priest pauses, his voice breaking, as he utters what he dares to call the forbidden truth. The greatest secret of Jesus is that his message could never be contained in a single book, nor controlled by a single church. His words are not dead letters frozen on pages. They are living flame, and flame refuses to be caged. It leaps, it consumes, it purifies, it illuminates, and it terrifies those who would prefer the world remain dark. This is why, the priest insists, certain teachings were silenced, not because they were false, but because they were too alive, too liberating, too uncontrollable. For if men and women knew that the kingdom burned within them, that God's dwelling was not only in temples but in their own awakened souls, they would never again bow to institutions that claimed to stand between them and the divine. They would never again be satisfied with a Christ flattened into doctrine, for they would encounter him as the voice that shakes the earth, as the truth that awakens the dead, as the burr that refuses to be tamed. And so the danger of these forbidden gospels is not in their words alone, but in the transformation they demand. For to hear them is to realize that Christ was never meant to be safe, never meant to be domesticated into religion as usual, but to be the disturber of false peace, the disruptor of empires, the revealer of the God who cannot be caged. As the priest closes the manuscript, his eyes burn with both fear and hope, for he knows that to speak of this, Christ is to risk everything, yet also to gain everything. He whispers, almost as if to himself, yet with a weight that echoes through centuries. Jesus is not a relic of history, nor the possession of any church, but the living flame that waits to erupt in every heart, the forbidden truth that cannot be silenced.